This is fun to be back here. I see a lot of familiar faces from our month-long intensive and from the vision train. So good to see you, and so many new faces. And welcome to this adventure. You know, this is a taste of, I feel like these fundraiser workshops are little tastes and drop-ins into, you know, a deeper practice and a whole community, really. So I look forward to having this experience today with you, and make something new, make something that has never been seen before, go deeper into your practice, and add something extra to your toolbox, maybe a different way of seeing things. So yeah, with this idea, it's just like, okay, what could I teach for a 3-hour workshop? And this is fun, these kinds of little segments like this, little chunk of you know, dive into one aspect. And I've had so many people over the years ask me about the energy lines, you know, and this kind of like this filament or the smoke or this it's energy lines, flow lines is what Alicia said. And so I was like, okay, let's name it that. Let's try that and see if I could focus on that, because it's something that actually I don't really, I think, focus on that much myself. Like, it's come so naturally. And so I figured I would go through some of my work and give you a little presentation first to warm up and to kind of talk about, you know, where it comes from, what kind of my insight is, look at some paintings, look at also some paintings in the different stages of their evolution, which some of you will remember from the Transformation 2020 workshop. And then we're going to make some. Then we're going to start a painting or work into an existing painting. And yeah, so I think it'll be a full rounded 3 hours. Gotta get it from all directions. So I'm going to start with the presentation and sharing my screen. I see lots of people are saying where they're tuning in from. That's so awesome. I was gonna suggest that too, because it's so cool that we are tuning in from all over the world. It just blows my mind, you know, that we're able to do this, and we're like 5.5 or something months deep on the vision train already. So if you don't know about that yet, really will welcome you to come join us. If you want to keep painting today after the workshop, to jump onto the vision train, because it is going nonstop. It's the nonstop vision train global art jam. And it's, you know, it's a place where we can be together, be alone together, be creative, be supportive of each other. And it's pretty fun. We actually, you know, this week is Burning Man. And I don't know, some of you may follow or love or have been or want to go someday to Burning Man, but Burning Man's online this year, and we decided to take the vision train to Burning Man, and it's been a really fun experience. I can talk about it later, but the people that are popping in off of the Playa, off of the Sparkleverse, it's a really diverse crowd. So if you want an interactive, entertaining space to get creative in, yeah, come join us. So let's jump into this presentation. I'm going to try to not talk too much. This would have been my 11th burn, but here we are. We're going to burn something tonight. I think we all should burn something, you know. It's a ceremonial, it's a ritual thing to release and to let go. You know, it's a good time of year to do that. Okay. So I'm going to share screen and take you on a little story. And if you feel like sketching while I'm talking, sometimes that helps you integrate also information and just get you in that flow. Let's like get into the flow line thing, you know, like do a little multitasking, just start like playing with lines, interweaving, doodle. doodle while I'm sharing. I think it would be really fun, and take aspects of what you see on the screen and just like integrate that too. Like just be very, very liberal in whatever you're feeling. Put it into some energetic fields in your sketchbook or on a random piece of paper. Don't make it important. So here we are. I'm so stoked about this whole fundraiser series. It's been a really, really cool ride. The first segment of it, was really successful. It was a way to really bring together and invite the various teachers that have taught at the Vienna Academy to, it's a bite-sized chunk. I feel like it's a session, these 3-hour things, and to get the teachers also into teaching in this format, and for everybody else too. Like, how can we actually, really make the most of this situation? It's actually also an incredible blessing, because look at how many of us are here. Like, we couldn't all fit in one space anyway. And we're in the comfort of our own homes and studios. We're embracing this possibility, and we're all over the world. It's amazing. Okay, so the Flow Lines workshop. Let's dive in. So this painting, I didn't always do these lines. They kind of like, they appeared at a certain point, and I'm not exactly sure which point that was, but I remember this painting being a real turning point. And this painting in general was a big turning point in my life, because it was 2006, and I was in a place of like, it was bursting from inside of me, this desire to find my way. Right. I had studied with Michael Fuchs and Ernst Fuchs. I was late 90s, early 2000s, and I was an assistant to Ernst Fuchs in Austria. And I was already like 6 years deep at this point. And I was doing all kinds of stuff, experimenting, painting, selling paintings, exhibiting, but I still hadn't broken through something. And so I took a box of paints, a roll of canvas, and I went to Indonesia by myself for 2 months, got a studio, and painted. That's all I did. And it was a huge turning point in my life, because I was really interested in finding something that I could really feel safe in and express myself in. And so this was one of the first paintings that I started there. I saw this shape of the egg was brought to me. This is where I started painting eggs, which was this form that I think really supported this exploration of vibration. And this one is complex. And you can see the different layers here too, right? You can see this, like the really colorful kind of like rainbow background with these red orange lines. And then this weaving on top. And here I was really like uninterested in trying to do something that was, that was knowable. It was something that I was interested in pushing the boundaries. And so I started really experimenting with these lines. And there's something that I did learn though. I learned a lot working with Ernst Fuchs and Michael Fuchs and all of that. That foundation of classical painting was really already ingrained in me. So I knew how to wield the brush. I knew how to paint what I saw. And here I was looking to be free of that, right? And I remember there was a point in studying drapery, actually, that Fuchs really, he made in various times, but it was in drapery, these kinds of lines. You can see my mouse. You see how pretty much none of them are really parallel to each other, like copy each other totally. They're all a little bit different. So if we look at this one coming up, and it connects together, and then this comes out, there's always like there's an angle. There's an angle of how they're flowing together. And this is something that we're going to continue to look at as we look through these slides, that there's motion and movement to them. So they respond to each other in a way that is not the same as the one next to it, right? There's always going to be a little bit of a vibration and a difference. And this painting is one out of three pieces that were based on the paintings, places that were really influential in my life. And this one was Bali. And so this was basically the feeling. And there's me right in the center, little golden, sitting on a golden lotus, asking, asking for the vision to come. So this is a quite large painting that I did when I came back to my studio in Vienna. And I'm experimenting with this newfound freedom of using this form of the egg, because within that egg, I realized that I could find freedom that within myself of a kind of expectation to make something specific. I could allow something to come through. I could allow it to reveal itself through using this shape and then exploring with these lines. And I think a lot of the reasons I end up with so many lines sometimes is because I'm looking for the right line. I'm on that adventure. I don't know it ahead of time, but I'm looking for it. And so as I'm going, I'm exploring, and that's where the movement comes in. See, I think if you're too static with something, you're too planned, that's when it loses its motion, right? So looking at this piece, I call this piece potential. And it's kind of like this freeing of this kind of matrix of a more hardened kind of field down here into this like release. And it's a flower. It's, ooh, what is it, But this kind of piece was very, very, very strange in the beginning to me, but it felt very comfortable. And you can see, though, I'm working really with volume. So I'm each one of these kinds of strands, you can tell there's a light source, right? There's a light source, and there's also a reflective light. So you can see on this one here, we have this primary light source that is cool. And then we have a reflective light that is really warm. And then we have a shadow that's a little bit in between, right? And these are real basics that I use all the time, especially when kind of playing with these kinds of shapes and forms that are really ethereal. They still have form. That's the thing. They still have a little bit of shadow and a little bit of light. We're not getting into transparencies here yet, but there's still volume. Otherwise you wouldn't see anything, right? You got to see some light and some shadow. This painting was done 2007, and this was a real breakthrough piece as well. This is where I'm kind of venturing out of painting the egg and that kind of form, and really exploring, the figure and more shapes and these vibrations. And I didn't plan this. This painting really started from a sketch in my sketchbook, and I drew it up big on the canvas using vine charcoal, and then started painting into it. And there was things like this whole situation here. I remember very vividly when this happened. This was after, of course, I painted the whole background, right? So there's definitely layers here and hierarchy in a sense, that eventually the last things you're going to paint are the things that are, the closest to us. And when it comes to transparencies and being able to see things in the background. And so, but this kind of like, what I'm doing here is also, I have a hard edge and a soft edge. And this is something that we're really going to look into a lot. So there's like a hard edge and then a soft, and then it blends out, right? And then, so it gives a sense of form, of space. right? Especially that if you just have soft edges, it's not enough. You need both. So that hard edge and that soft edge are really, really important. And definitely I would suggest if any words that I'm saying come up and they're like, they make sense, write them down, write them on your drawing, you know, or write them in your sketchbook, in your spell book. That helps integrate them, and, you know, might make a poem about it later or something. So this painting called Evolution is another one that was something that really was I was exploring a lot this kind of these energetic fields, also the transparencies, and it was a piece that really challenged me. I mean, these paintings have really challenged me to the point of going into the, you know, real frustration of kind of like, because I don't have a reference, right? I don't have something else to refer to. So what do I have as my anchor? My reference is my feeling. My reference is my feeling. It's like, oh, there's too many lines. All right, simplify, right? There's not enough, or this is too stagnant. Okay, free it up. You know, your feeling is your guide here. But at the same time, there's also, I have this foundation of the Mish technique, which is what I teach in many ways. I mean, that's the foundation of kind of where I've come from, which is this way of developing layers and painting in light, glazing in color, and then painting in shadows. And we're going to work a little bit like that later. But it's not something, the Mish technique can be used in so many different ways and so many different approaches, and there's not one way, remember that. But it's kind of, to me, there's a rhythm that I have developed through that method of going into, of painting in the darks and going into the light and then going into the color. And we're gonna experience that a little bit later. And you can see here again in this piece how there's these lines in front, you know, were painted obviously after, but in many ways they've been sandwiched. So I'll paint a lot of these lines all on top of each other right in the beginning to get this, and it's a rat's nest of matrix spider webs, right? And then I start to pull them apart. And so I'm going to show you how I do that. This is another piece. This was a lot of my paintings too, starting around this period, were started live in performance with music. And, you know, music is great for frequency, vibration, you know, that sense, and, you know, playing with movement. And so this was one where I really went deep there, and lucid, what do I call this one? Lucid sound. And you can really see how I'm playing with lines on top of lines. And this is something too, like the form. So I talked about there being parallel, too much parallel form is then stagnant with and the same distance, right? You need to, like, it starts closer to an object and then it gets wider as it goes, right? There's like, it ripples. Look at the ripples that are coming out here. See, there's one to the next, and then they start to get more space. And you see how neat on either side, they're not the same. So I call this kind of organic symmetry. What I do is I make sure that I have my middle point. If I'm going to do a painting that's centered, this is something that I want you all to remember. If you're going to do a painting that has a centered focus, measure the middle. And if you don't measure the middle and it's off by like an inch or even a half inch, it's going to drive people crazy. It does. It'll drive you crazy and you don't know why. Be like, oh, something's about this, you know, but find that middle point but then anything around it can dance, you know? And so like, you don't need to be too like defined, but there's certain things that you do want to make sure are in alignment. And I think that middle point, especially for a piece like this, is really, really important. So if it's sometimes not on that mark, you're going to want to maybe you make another point next to it, and a new form arises, which then moves the whole center point, you know. But be flexible. Be flexible. And so see how these ripples are coming out here. I have this play of light and dark, right? And midtones that are coming out here. And then I'm bringing in other lines that are coming in this way. And this is what we're going to experiment with when we're painting. I want to play with this, with overlapping energy lines as well. And here it's like, so, and you get this by painting over what you did before. And that's kind of sometimes a little scary in the beginning, because you don't want to mess it up, right? But what's cool is you can always come back to the light, and you can always come back to the dark. And it's something that you keep weaving until you decide, what do you want in the front? Which fields do you want closer to you, and which field do you want to drop behind? And you can see how this shape here is there's a sharp line. See that sharp light up against the edge here, and then it fades out. These are those kinds of tricks. Sharp edge and soft, right? So that is really, really important. You can see that happening everywhere. And then you also see the form, complementary form here. So for complementary form is opposite in many ways to following the same form. It's giving it a nice opposite. Like in this painting, this is a limbic resonance. This is complementary form, you know, that's coming on either side like this. And that's kind of like overlapping a little bit, that has, it's complementary, right? These kinds of forms are complementary. And here, you know, this is going back and forth, doing a lot of weaving to then define some of these shapes, and then finding these transparencies, some of these forms in here. See, they start to get a little bit lost, but they're nice because they're in there, right? And then as you keep painting, you then define certain darks, and certain lights are then primary, and then others become less important. And you see here, see these lines back here? These actually have always kind of, I think I've done a couple of remixes of this painting where I've brought these back in front again. But see how these back here, they're in the background, right? And then I chose to bring these on top, but you can still see them through. And that's something that I think is, it can be kind of exciting. So I'm quite liberal in letting myself explore these shapes and forms, and then allow them to kind of be in the foundation, in the base. You can see here again, see how they're fatter here, and then they get thinner. See, they're not all the same thickness. So I remember once Fuchs looked at some piece that I was working on. It was of his, actually, and I think I was cross-hatching or what I was doing, but I remember him saying, "Ah, this looks like spaghetti." And I was so offended. I was so offended. And then it's like, later on, here I am painting lots of spaghetti. But it's spaghetti that's transparent. But it kind of, the color here too makes me think of spaghetti. But the spaghetti here, it's not just one thickness. It's got shape and form, and you can see how it has a little shadow on it. See, these kinds of things are really effective. See that? And then it's not the same. Each one is a little bit different, right? Each one's a little bit different. And that's what makes the ripple really nice. So you got to get outside of like really being too organized. You know, this is definitely getting out of the organization. So this painting was one that was a real complex adventure, and I will spare you all the stages of it this time. Some of you have seen this, of course, you know, me lay it out from the beginning, but this has, you know, all these overlapping, these layering of lines. You know, they happen through the development of the piece, and they can be very many. There's lots of awkward moments, but a lot of the things that I'm looking for here, not just in like the colors, but like the lines themselves and how they are in harmony with each other. So see how this is coming out, like it's like a slight down, up, out, and then this line that's coming here is coming over. You know, it's complementing. They're complementing each other in a really beautiful way. And the same with this shape that's coming here, these shapes here that are curving around each other. You know, this kind of, this weaving is a real kind of like, it's a real rootsy, you know, it reminds us of the vine. It's the dance of the masculine and the feminine. It's like the weaving of the of spirit, right? And that's something that I love to play with. And that kind of, that shape, the shape is in, these shapes are in the human body and they're in nature. You know, if you look into nature, there's no straight lines. There's no straight lines. So, and if you look at the human body, that's one of the best places to really observe these S forms in the face, in the whole body. It's all S forms. You know, in the arm, it's like it comes in this way, and then it goes around to the other side. It's all these kinds of S forms. So, you know, it's in nature. So it's a very, very natural, I think, you know, expression and way to express also energy flowing. This piece, Pronoia, this was actually, I started this at COSM the first time I went to the Chapel of Sacred Mirrors and was working with Alex and Allison Gray. And this is a tribute to them. You can see Allison's secret writing here. And then also the figure, the transparent human, tribute to Alex. And this is also a tribute to the prophecy of these times, of the eagle and the condor flying together in this era of a new potential of planetary oneness and peace. And but here I'm really playing with these lines again too. And this one I really wanted to put in here as a way of looking at color. And looking at the color here, see how I have this shadow that I'm putting in around these lines that is reddish, right? It's because I have this like blues and yellows and greens, but then so I'm bringing in like the spectral color, right? And the red, this warm tone, is really effective in bringing it closer to us, right? When there's so much that's further away. And at the same time allowing for the space to be seen, right? So there's also, you can go overboard with too many lines, right? Depending on what you want to see through. You know, do you have another background that you're trying to, that you want to make sure that the viewer is focused on, or do you want them to focus on the lines? I mean, you have to go overboard to know that you've gone too far sometimes, you know, and then you come back and I mean, the layers that I have in my paintings is insane. And I'm going to show you some, but see here, up here, you can barely see these these lines that are coming across that are in the background, those were there at one point and they were quite primary. And this is something that sometimes if I saw that and I was like, oh man, and I kept seeing it and it kept bugging me and I couldn't get rid of it, then I would bring them back. And maybe they would need to be back, but for some reason I decided that it wasn't necessary. And so those lines stayed there, but you can still kind of see them, right? So I end up painting over, like I can paint over things so much and it's still hard to get rid of some of those lines, but I don't think they're an issue here. You may have not even noticed if I didn't point it out. I don't think I noticed until right now. This is a painting, Levolution, that started live. This was around the time of Fukushima. I don't know if I have the date right, but there was a prayer for healing. And here, this is all done in acrylic. Many of my paintings are done in acrylic, casein, egg tempera, and oil. And so here you can see also these lines here are the ones that are coming in front, right, of her. And she's already, like, her hair has already been painted when I brought these on top, right? This is very important, right? I'm not going and painting these first and leaving them and then going and painting this back here. There's a hierarchy happening here, you know? And sometimes in my initial sketch, this will, you know, they'll be drawn on top of each other. But then throughout the painting, I'm, you know, really having to pull it apart. It's a two-dimensional plane, but I have to pull it apart, right? And make decisions of what's behind and what's in front, because see how this line goes behind and then these come in front. And sometimes, you know, a lot of times I don't, like this piece, I did not plan it. I didn't see it ahead of time. I'm reacting to it as it goes. This is a painting I started at Burning Man, 2011, Rites of Passage. And here we have like a landscape, quite a specific landscape, with all this action happening on top. And you see how these lines that are coming out, they are behind. And they are behind because I've brought a dark with a sharp edge in front with a little bit of light with a sharp edge. You know, those two are next to each other and they both fade out. That fading is really important. That's something that I'm going to show you how I do that with a dry brush and a soft brush, and then also bringing these on top. Gosh, I've done so many of these lines. This one drove me crazy. I was to the point where I'm never going to do this, like these kind of matrix lines again. Really pushed it to the edge here. And this is a portrait commission, Divine Love. And you can see there's Burning Man down here, but you can barely see it because I got so intricate with my matrix. This is the point where I really feel like I went into it so deep that I got lost. I still think it's fascinating. And if you look at this painting with the kind of, with those glasses that pull the space apart, it really works really well. But in each kind of area, I'm working with the spectrum of color of yellow, blue, and red. And that spectrum is in each kind of area. And you can see how this whole background of this butterfly was painted first, and then all of these lines came on top second. But to be able to see both, I had to leave enough of that first round. Yeah. This one is a small painting called Source. And this one has also gone through a lot of transformation. The information that's underneath this piece is very different and is a big mess compared to what's here. And I ended up painting over it in a pretty dark black glaze, but I could still see a lot of what I had underneath. And that information helped inform a lot of these shapes. And so it's like, you know, a lot of these shapes they're coming out of something or somewhere. They have some kind of a direction, or they're a reaction to something. This is a live painting done in a couple hours at in Washington, D.C. on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial during Disclosure Fest. That was a real adventure a couple years ago. And here I'm also playing with the various lines and space, and you know, working live. We're going to play with this today too, because we're not going to have a lot of time. So working with drying time is also really important. This is a little painting. I finished this actually the first of this year, called Emergence. And this is on wood. This is acrylic and casein and oil. And you can see all these vibrations and dots. I love integrating dots at some point near the end of the piece. But up here too, you can see the shapes. See how this flow goes this direction, and then this one comes like this. So they're a little bit different. And this kind of like this complementary form, they're weaving with each other, but they're not weaving like here. All right, so some of my inspiration when I think about like, where does it come from? You know, where did these movements come from? I look at water and I see how water is not, you know, it's alive. It's alive. And if I were to take this photograph and I were to draw lines in it, I would find all the shapes and movements that would be these S forms, right? They're like, they would flow, but they're not the same, right? So things like this is really good to study. This is from nature, to study the kind of like the movement and the expansion that can come out of a line. Because when you just draw a line out of your own doodle, your line is going to be informed by what you've been informed by. But if you push that a little bit further, if you go a little bit further and actually really look at the human form and the contour of an arm, you know, and really see like how does that line, like how like diverse can it be? I look at bark. These are some images I grabbed from the internet, but look at the movement of the tree and how it grows, and how you can find these lines that are, you know, here's the edge of the tree, but then you look at like this one, see how this one's like coming off the edge of the tree, but it's a little bit different, right? They're a little bit different, but they're working together. And this is in nature. Everywhere in nature, you'll find that it's not totally, you know, it's not totally the same. So even if you draw a tree, like either side, like this line and this line, they're not going to be totally parallel. Very rarely, right? They're going to have a little bit of a difference of how they're created. This is the organic symmetry. And then smoke, like, wow, right? Have you ever just marveled at watching the smoke just kind of like, you know, if you can see that with a dark background, it's incredible. And this is where looking at like the edge of something, like the sharpness and then softening it. You know, this is these are the clues. This is where you can turn to for the clues in painting energy, and then also like the transparency that you can see here, right? So I'm going to show you now like the breakdown of some pieces. And this is the one that we used for the flyer for this workshop. And here you can see how I'm not starting at the very beginning here of in terms of the slides, but here you can see I've already painted a bunch of these energy lines in here. And then I've come in and I've glazed, which is like a thin wash of paint over the whole piece. And all of this was white before, right? These were white lines. And so then here I'm coming back and I'm articulating those lines again, but I'm refining them. I'm refining them. And then I'm coming in this phase and I'm coloring them each a little bit differently. And the way I start with this is I'm going to start with one color. Say I usually start with a yellow, like the lightest color on the spectrum, and we'll paint that in, and then I'll move through the rest of the colors one by one as they raise their hand until I've pretty much covered most of my white. And then here I come back into my darks. So I go back then into the depths and see the difference here of like, see the edge here, like how I've lost this edge. It's not very defined, but I come back in here with the same colors that I have in my base and I start to refine it. See, and here you can see that even more, how I'm really refining that. You can see that's so much more defined. And then I come back with some more lights, maybe here on the outside. And then it can really pop, if you want to pop things. That's this painting. And you can see how there's the different forms in the background. And so this painting, Healing, has also gone through a lot of adventure here. And here I'm really exploring and see how much I'm leaving space here so that I can see what's behind it, right? And then bringing this one in front all the way through. So, and you see how these guys, these lines here come back on top at the end. This piece. And see how they're also, see they're skinny, then they get fatter, then they get skinny again. That's something that we want to look at. This one got really complex. And there's a lot of weaving lines here. You see I'm going into my darks. I'm just painting all these forms. I'm using multiple colors. And I'm going even deeper. And then I come into, and then I just start working with my white. And I'm working with titanium white acrylic here. And I'm continuing in this weaving, just using white. And then here I start glazing some color over the white. My goal is to cover all my white. And then I come back with some more color or lights and then more color. And this painting turned into this. Boom. I could keep painting on this forever. It's like a trance experience. But this is, you know, weaving, weaving, weaving. I feel like I'm knitting here. This was started as a live painting. This was not that purple, it was the light. But then blasting in the white. And then here I'm coming back to the that spiral that's in the background, and I'm bringing that forward. Then I'm coloring that in through glazes. Then I'm bringing this form back on top and glazing in colors. And then here that's the finished piece. So you can see how the layering is happening. This one is with the figure. You can work it into studying the figure, and then see how I'm painting these lines through the figure, right? And because I know that that's not the end game, but I want these lines to be fluid. That's something with flow lines, you want them to be fluid. You don't want to, like, say I paint the figure and then I paint a line and then it stops right here and then it starts right here, and then it stops there and then it starts there. You're never going to make that look good. It's not going to work. So you got to paint it through, right? And then look, you can come back to the figure, you know, and bring her forward again, bring her on top. And see these, and these lines down here that goes through these phases. I don't know where that came from. These phases of this white coming back on top, and then coming in with the color. And it's very subtle near the end. But you see these lines that are coming through her body, how I'm picking them back up again, very subtly. And I'm starting to move a little bit faster because I'm looking at my time. I was like, we've got to have time to paint. This piece, I did for Moksha. This is the shaman. And this one started, you'll see how in my sketch, this is my sketch on my canvas. And then I start getting more complex, bringing in the lights, and then going into some darks and a little bit of color, coming into some more color, and then bringing back the lights. You see how it's weaving though, and it's all informed, you know, from those initial lines, right? You can see how they get a little bit more complex. But it's the same system. And how this one started too. This one has a lot of exploration of different lines happening. But as I go, I keep painting over them. I keep painting over them and exploring through bringing back the light and also following the contour of the face. You know, like I'm also following, and I'm informed by the shapes that are there. And riffing off of them, like with as if I were a musician. I'm a musician with paint. You can see, and sometimes they're overlapping. Lots of overlapping, and this painting is probably 10 glazes deep, at least. You know, of phases of bringing back the light. And this is the White Tara, and this started very loose live painting at Beloved Festival 2014. And here I'm playing with some very loose forms. I had no idea who was going to show up here and what was going to happen. And there she is. The White Tara starts to arrive. And lots of lines. Oh my God. I get to this point sometimes. I'm like, Amanda, what are you doing? This is, but you got to explore, pushing those boundaries. And then here I'm going into the whites, and I'm starting to define deeper, define the forms, you know, bringing my edges in. I define shadow through using light. Bringing color back in, and see how I'm changing even this whole egg right here. I decided to totally change that. And so I laid down a darker color here and started to define these forms, these buildings, bring in the light. But I can still see some of that back here, some of the transparency, because I'm really thinning down my paint and only using what I really need. It's the White Tara. And this is another painting that I started 2014. This is at the Earth Frequency in Australia. And this is the Wisdom Keeper. And this I started on stage. And here you can see I'm going into the white. There's this alien overlord is what I called him. Showed up, and I was just like, oh God, what is this guy doing in my painting? It's kind of scaring me. It's good sometimes to be scared, I guess. It propels you towards questioning also, like what's my intention here? What am I really doing? What's this? This is obviously about transformation. And but here I'm coming back into my lines, like into my darks. And then from these darks, I'm going into my lights, bringing in the dots. I was in Australia inspired by the Aboriginal paintings. And then here I changed the face. I realized I just really couldn't, I couldn't get in touch with this figure. I was like, I don't know who you are. And I'm not, we're just not friends right now. And so I really wanted to paint an Aboriginal native, somebody from the Australian land. And then I figured that it needed to be a wise elder. And but you can see all these layers of bringing in the lines and the dots. And when you look, you can see some of the lines behind them. But look, this is a really good one for looking at the complementary form. And see how these forms are they're you know, they dance with each other. See how this one comes out like this, and then this one comes in like this. You know, it's finding those kinds of those angles and those forms that are really, really interesting. And you can see here, like, see how this one and this one, you know, they're kind of like the most similar, but then you have this one, and this one, and there's like so much more space here. They're different. I love that. I love that. I love that they're different. It keeps me curious and interested. So yesterday I did a painting. Some of you were there and painted along with me, and we all jammed to this set by Goldcat. And we painted, we were streamed live into the virtual mushroom on the infinite playa, and here we are in the multiverse. We were painting right down here on a stage, streamed into a virtual reality. And I painted this in 2 hours from, it's behind me. And it's very loose, but it, you know, I have a bit of a formula of how I build stuff up and work it out. So it was a good warm up for today, I thought, you know, and I figured I'd show you I did a time lapse of it, and I would show that to you right before we got started. And it's fast. Look at, so I started with dioxazine purple, bringing in these forms. And then I start putting in color, and I'm covering all of my whites, bringing in color, going deeper. Now I'm blasting and back into the white. And then I'm back into color. And then I'm back into a little bit of white. But bam, that was it. It goes so fast, huh? It goes so fast. That's a little system. I'll play it one more time. So say I used a little charcoal in the beginning to sketch in, just to get comfortable. And I'm painting in using just that purple and some blues. Now into some reds and oranges, then into some yellows, and into some other darks and white. So it's a formula that I follow. You see, so I went into the whites twice in this phase. So now we're going to, these were some of the materials that I had put out, we had put out there in the invite, in the class description. And sketch paper wasn't in there, but I would suggest you have some sketch paper for the very first like 10 minutes, first 10 minutes. And I know you've already been sketching as well. But I'm going to do a little bit, and this is going to be like a paint along kind of thing. And we've got two solid hours, right? To do this. We're going to take a little break first before we go into this, but I just wanted to talk about the materials so you could prepare. Vine charcoal would be great to have. If you just have a pencil, that's okay too. Or you could have some, pastel would work actually as well, if you have some pastels. And then I like to use these golden fluid acrylics, and they're a really high quality, one of the highest quality acrylic paints you can buy. And they have a fluidity to them that's really nice. The heavy body acrylics are more for like direct painting, but they'll work as well. So if that's what you have, that's fine. If you just have watercolor, for an example, that'll work too on some watercolor paper. It's nice to have, if you have some white titanium or just white acrylic paint, that's going to be, you'll be able to layer on top of that with a watercolor. Because the thing with watercolor is it dissolves again. If you're working in oil, I mean, you could do it in oil too, but with oil, you're not going to be able to, we're not going to be able to layer right now because you got to let stuff dry. But you can still paint flow lines if you're working in oil now. And the colors are totally open. You know, I realized today, after I did that thing yesterday, I was like, oh, I didn't put purple in here. Just raw umber. But these colors, I'm going to work with these colors because this is what I put out there. But you're welcome to use whatever colors you want. And a variety of brushes is good to have. And I forgot to also say, get soft brushes, but I figured, you know, this is a little dip the toes in kind of a class. So maybe after this, if you see how the kind of brushes that I use, and if you like them, I would suggest getting some soft brushes if you just have really coarse ones. Like the hog hair brushes don't really work very well with my method.
Let's get flowy. Yay. So I'm going to change my other camera over, and there we go. So what I've got here is I've got just a pad of paper just to kind of do a little warm up. I know you guys have gotten some warm up in, but I figured it could be good to you know, have something else before we touch the canvas. I've got here this vine charcoal, and vine charcoal is really fabulous to work with if you haven't before. It's very it's non-committal in many ways. It has like it doesn't have much binder in it. It doesn't have any binder in it, so you can smear it, and it's so nice. So I figured practicing a little bit. I love to, especially if I haven't been drawing much. Maybe, you know, I'm coming back from a little bit of a fast, for forced or not, you know, of drawing. I love working with charcoal. And see here, I'm going to experiment with creating some lines that are not very, you know, they're not exactly the same. They're a little bit different. Just play with that, with the shapes. And then maybe there's one that's going to come like this. And so with the charcoal, you can smear it with your hands too, which I just love to do. It's a, you know, if you're going to do a really nice charcoal drawing, you don't want to do that because you get the oils from your fingers in your drawing. But I can't help myself a lot of the time. But here I'm just like, see how I'm continuing to explore these lines, and that's how there end up being so many of them sometimes. And see, so now that's just like spaghetti, right? We've got these like just spaghetti lines here, but then what if we gave them a little bit of form? This one, and we gave a little bit of a little bit darker on one side. So maybe this one would be a similar situation. And also an eraser could be nice to use, especially with charcoal, because then if you're coming in and you've got some other just go for it. See what happens. I actually should pull out some of the drawings that my dad did. My dad came in and he's never drawn or painted in his life, and he's in his mid to late 70s, and he was just like, I think he had a beer or two. He was feeling kind of loose and excited, and he sat down and he just started like doing doing these lines. And I think it was because of, you know, he's watched me do them for so many years, but he had a real kind of natural knack for it. So, you know, now these are on top. You know, when I was going through all my slides of looking for paintings with flow lines, I was like, no wonder, man, I have so many of them. And it's something that I don't really think that much about. It's something that's become this kind of, it's a meditation in many ways, I think, for me. And it's like a puzzle. And I can't say that, I mean, anytime I ever do a puzzle, I don't do them very often, but they're fun. Figuring it out. I mean, I think that's a lot of what the art making process is figuring it out. And listen, you know, not just figuring out like, what do you want, but figuring out what does the piece want? Like, what is happening? I mean, it's a very strange thing, making art. So see so I'm playing with this weaving that's just, you know, and see, when you do it on a piece of paper like this, that you don't have to be too precious about it. And this is something with cross hatching. We're not going to explore cross hatching today, but because this is a kind of cross hatching, I want to bring up the you know, the difference in say, like making a cross, you know, in cross hatching, you know, the way the word kind of, the description tells us that it would be something like this, you know, but this is it's very stagnant. Do you see how stagnant that is? I mean, there's a way of shading that you could do all your shading at 90-degree angles like this, but it's much better to have more of an angle. You know, it breaks it up a little bit, so it's not so static. It's like cancels it out when it's like this. But if there's you know, and that's the same that's happening here. See, we're just giving it a little bit of a form. We're giving it motion. And so see also how I'm see how I'm holding my charcoal? Like, I'm not holding it like this, right? I'm not like, this is what if there's any tattoo artists here, I've done a little bit of tattooing too, and I know that this is the kind of range of motion you have to do for tattooing. But here, like in painting and drawing, you want to hold your pencil, your paintbrush a little bit looser, and use your whole arm. See, it's like whoosh. Use your whole body. You can make sound effects too. Whoosh. Oops. And then you drop your charcoal. But this looseness is really important in the beginning. So, okay, now we're going to put this aside. We've covered the paper. And now we got fresh new canvas. Yay! What's going to happen with this one? See, I've learned that even with teaching, all my little practice panels turn into something eventually. And there's some painting. So it's like a new friend, the void, the field of potentiality. Maybe you need to burn a little bit something. I'm having too much fun. I'm going to burn some sage. Say a little prayer, you know, take a moment. Let's take a moment and drop into that feeling, that breath. Feel into really what you want, what your vision is, what you want to explore. And just, maybe don't think about things. Let's think about stretching and think about movement. Like stretching when you do yoga. Don't you feel so good afterwards? All right. Okay. So new friend, here we go. We're starting out, and we're starting out with a feeling of flow and movement. And I am going to find my center because, I've learned I may not use it. And see, I'm using my charcoal, but at least I know where it is in case I need it. But there's so many different approaches here. It may not be needed, but I just gotta walk my talk, right? I'm trying to walk my talk. So I'm going to start again with this charcoal. I'm going to start with the same charcoal that I was using in my drawing. And I'm going to just start with bringing in a couple lines. And let's see, I'm gonna follow that field there. I'm just gonna see and say it's a little bit, maybe my sense is this one's a little bit off. It's not following. So look, I've just come right in here and it's like, this is a nice, like, just follow my lead here. If you're feeling it, I'm just like following this motion of the fluidity of starting at the edge and then down to a point or a general direction. I mean, I really don't know what's going to happen here, but something's bound to happen. It always does. And don't worry about like doing something wrong, because that's what informs you to keep going, because you're interested in what is it that, I wonder if I need to go put that out. No, that's perfect. All right, so here I've got this direction going here. Maybe one more little one there. Okay. And maybe I'm going to start now. Maybe I'll do a few more in this direction. All right. And then, and that's it. Let's leave that for now. Let's just start with like one field. And now we're going to drop into a color. And I'm going to choose one of my darker tones. I'm going to go for the raw umber. It's a good entry point. And I use containers and lids of things. Delicious creamy garlic. Do any of you guys know this? If you're in the States, this stuff's so delicious. So, because the acrylic is, this is all plastic, and someday I'm gonna not use any of it anymore. Just feeling that, it's like we gotta really stop this plastic game. But these paints, when you immortalize pigment suspended in medium on canvas, it's going to stay there. It's most likely not going to land in a landfill. Why don't we make that goal? This is a precious thing that somebody's going to take care of, and for a long time. So let's make something beautiful. We're not making landfill art. We're making stuff out of the landfills. I really, really, really respect everyone that does that. And my partner, Joe Bob, is somebody that does that. We were having a little argument the other day, a spirited argument about recycling, because I was like, you know, you don't recycle all the time, and I really think you should. And he's like, do you see what I do with all the amount that he has recycled in building materials? We have a salvage yard here, and it is incredible. So I've put out some of this raw umber into my little bowl here. I have some water, and I'm only going to use water right now. I'm only going to use water, and I'm only going to use, actually I want to use something a little bit more contrast here. I'll put this paint over here so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm only going to use water, really simple, using acrylic and water. And I have a rag, very important. I want you to have a rag. Go get it if you don't have it. You want to have a rag. It could be a paper towel, something like that, but you need something to be able to dab your brush off on. So I got this paint here, and this is like real direct with, I mean, there's no water mixed in here at the moment. And so I'm dipping my brush in some water, and I'm making a puddle. Can you see this? I'm making a puddle of I'm thinning it down. And there's now a lot of water here, right? And I definitely don't need all this water in my brush. So I'm going to use a rag, and I'm pulling out that excess, right? And so now I'm going to come in, and I'm going to just follow some of those lines. See, I can pull off some of that. And just like pull that charcoal with it. See, I'm like wiping it off, and you can really feel when it's the right consistency. So in many ways, this is like watercolor almost, in some regards. You know, I'm really thinning it down. I'm not using much paint at all, and I'm using the lines to just kind of play off of, but I'm also not attached to them totally. I'm always going forward towards finding that right line, and see how like that one all of a sudden becomes a little bit softer. And sometimes one will get thicker that you didn't think it would be thicker, but that's okay. You're just like, you're in movement. Feel like you're dancing. You know, we'll put on some music here in a little bit, and we'll get into like the dance flow of the painting with music, painting with a group together. See, so I'm just dabbing up some more of my little thinned down lake, using my rag, pulling it off. But painting in a group, yesterday was so much fun. Painting in a group when you know you have a time and an audience. And see how I'm getting wobbly here? Oh, I'm getting wobbly. Take a deep breath. And then hold your breath. I'm just kind of kidding, but you know, sometimes you gotta hold your breath too. I find that I hold my breath sometimes too much. See how I keep going over this? I'm softening it each time. And each time I'm like defining my edge a little bit better. And see how it's softening kind of in the more towards the center. And of course, depending on what environment you are in, it's going to dry faster, it's going to dry slower, whatever surface you're working on. You know, you have to be adaptable, to be willing to be flexible, to not take things personally too, if it doesn't go right the way you think it should. You are an explorer, and you don't always know what's right. And that's often where we get stuck, because we're like, so, you know, we can get frustrated because we go into things with a certain kind of idea, and then it doesn't turn out that way, and then we lose, then we get upset. Anybody know that? Sounds like life. Sounds like life. So I also, you know, this brush is a filbert. This is a filbert. It's a snap Princeton filbert brush that I've used quite a bit. It needs a really good washing, actually, but it's I love filberts because you can do these nice lines and fades and shading really well. So, and if you do have too much water on your canvas, then, you know, if it gets drippy, you just, you know, take it off on your brush. And so now, of course, this needs to dry a little bit, but it's drying. There's not too much paint on here. So I'm going to rub off some of this excess charcoal that is there that I really, you know, I don't need this excess charcoal, any excess lines, because you don't have to paint all of them. Like the charcoal, you know, you can put down a line and then you can kind of smear it away. Oh, there's my center point. We'll see if we end up using it. We might not. I just looked at my clock and it said 1, 2, 3, 4. Does anybody else get a kick out of numbers? You know, when you see 1111 or something. My dad asked me years ago, he's like, what's it with the 1111? And, you know, I don't like to define it too much. I just say that it makes me smile, and it makes me giggle. It makes me feel like connected. But everybody has special numbers. So, okay. So I'm gonna let this is drying. And while this is drying, I'm going to bring in some other colors in where the white is. Because my goal actually at this point is I kind of want to cover my white. I want to cover my white. So I'm going to come in, actually, before I do that, sorry, this is classic me. I'm like, okay, I'm ready for the next step. No, I'm not. I'm gonna do a couple more of these guys here. I just feel like they need to like go off the page a little bit. Okay. We don't know where they're going yet. It's okay. One more. We don't even know which direction this canvas is going yet. I don't know any of these things. It's really fun to be in the unknown sometimes. All right, so next color that I'm going to use, I'm going to jump into, I'm going to come into this magenta. Or should I come into decisions? Yeah, magenta. Actually, let's let this dry a little bit. It's drying fast. Okay, I can already go over it. Okay, we're good. Make sure yours is pretty dry before you get into the next. So I've got some magenta. I'm squeezing out here, and wait, should see, I'm already recalculating my plan. Okay, no magenta yet. Okay, it can still be, if you squeeze it out, it's fine. We're gonna get to it. We're gonna stick with the raw umber, and we're gonna go back to our charcoal. That's what we're gonna do. This is drying right now, but we're gonna come in and we're gonna start to bring in some other lines in a different kind of flow, and they could be complementary. You could choose to like make them complementary or not. I think I'm going to go for the somewhat complementary. So I have my middle line that goes up like this, and I might want to make a little mark there. And what I'll end up doing is I'll find like I'll find, say, like this line, and I'm going to look for where it is here and kind of like take just a point, like say right here. And in relation to this, and I could measure it, but I could just do it like a subtle kind of mark that's like, it's in the range, right? And then the same with up here, I'll find maybe this one, this line, and this one. So, and that is going to be maybe approximately there and there, right? And so I'm going to go like this. I think this is really good for the balancing too of our brains. There's something about this kind of exploration of form, of this organic symmetry, that is really a good exercise for our brains. And see how I kind of, this is why I do this with the charcoal before I go into the paint. See, because I can kind of like smear it and because my brain is working to catch up here. And it doesn't have to be exactly the same. Right? And so once I got one of them, then I can start, I can see, okay, there's my center point. This one's, I'm going to want to, this one's going to cross approximately there. Yeah. So, and then we're going to continue that way. And it's a little bit different, right? You can see how one side is maybe easier than the other for you, depending if you're right hand or left hand. And this one is. Nice. Okay. And so then we're gonna, this one kind of comes here. And it's nice sometimes to do, I love to do these kinds of lines too, because there's kind of a quiet to it, you know, there's not a lot of noise. There's something comforting. But see how this, the lines, you want them to be organic. You want them to have motion and not be too static. And that's something that I see in, you know, when you're trying too hard, and you try too hard in the beginning, and that's natural, right? But you gotta at some point kind of like just surrender. So now, you know, the other paint is pretty dry. We're gonna come in here, their same color, could be raw umber. You could even use a different color at this point, you know, but we're gonna stick with the raw umber. I've made a little bit of a pool. I've thinned down the paint. And now here we go. I'm gonna come in and we're gonna paint these in. You know, and remember to use your rag, because there can be a little bit, if there's a little bit too much paint on there, you can just pull it right off. No, it's hard to talk when you're trying to, you gotta like, it's fun. Like when I'm doing this, when I do it live, you know, it's like dance, 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 and then freeze, draw a line. I think making sounds, getting into the movement of the, you know, sounds and dance, you know, that's what this is. And this frequency, one of the I think where the lines came from in some ways, like, or how they were released, like this kind of this freedom of this matrix was from also having painted so much already. And then I had my first experience with LSD when I was 27. And it was like, I knew there was something going on there. You know, I had been around enough people, and I had started to meet more artists that had explained, you know, kind of were explaining what they saw. I'd seen Alex Gray's work at that point, Robert Venosa, and Ernst Fuchs was definitely a psychonaut in a sense, but his real inspiration came from experimenting with peyote in the 50s and with psilocybin mushrooms. But there's a kind of sight, that a vision that you break through into, of being able to see patterns, of being able to see this kind of like interwoven web of reality. And it wasn't so much that it wasn't so much, I feel like, of what I saw. It was more like this kind of affirmation that what I felt, that I could connect this feeling with the brush. And it was something that I had experienced, I had seen, like I saw a lot of energy fields and auras when I was a kid. And I had this vague memory of it. It kind of disappeared when I was a young teenager, young person, more interested in social acceptance. And that was, you know, I kind of lost that access of being able to see that stuff, but I knew it. I knew it was there. And through painting, I kind of was able to access some of that space again. But it wasn't necessarily that I saw it. It was more that I kind of like, I opened myself up to the fields that already exist, that are there. Because there's sound. I mean, it's just amazing. Like the fact that we're able to connect this way. We're all over the world. We're in real time. And, you know, it's like, okay, there's machines doing this, but there's something deeper going on. And we know this when we go and do the work with the plants, when we go sit with the plants, the teachers, the plant teachers, they show us that there's a lot more going on here. All right, so now we got some stuff happening. Nice. Okay, so we're going for, if you want to stay in more earthy tones, you can definitely, you know, choose your colors. I'm going to go towards the magenta. You could go for like a more of an earthy, like burnt sienna if you feel like it, but something that's a little bit different than the raw umber would be ideal, though you could even stay with the raw umber. But our next goal here is that we're going to cover our white, and we got to let that dry just a few moments. So see some of this, some of the lines down here at the bottom, they're not very precise yet. You know, I feel like I'm, you know, this kind of frustrates me because I haven't figured this out yet. But that's the kind of thing that I know I'm going to get to. So there's this like anticipation with painting and with art that kind of continues to keep my attention. I'm like, I'm on the edge of my seat of loving it and I'm hating it, you know, and there's this driving force to keep going deeper and to make it be something that I am in total love with. But the goal too is to really get into the love, to really be in love with the process, you know, and to know that there's moments when it gets weird, but those weird moments, those moments of kind of frustration or kind of feeling maybe even down on yourself, like, oh, why did I do that? I knew I shouldn't have done it, but I did it, right? Can you hear that little voice that comes in life too? You know, I shouldn't have said that, but I did it. You know, and so it was self-deprecating. But instead to kind of like take a deep breath and go into the kind of surrender to like seeing it, and then looking for the opportunity within it and just showing up. Keep showing up. Don't abandon it. Don't abandon it. Sometimes you do. There's a point where sometimes you really need to abandon it, and slow down too. You know, so many times we go too fast and we make impulsive choices, you know, and our impulse is valuable, but sometimes it overrides, you know. So there we go. We've gotten rid of our rest of the charcoal. And, you know, to get acrylic to dry really fast, you can put it in the sun, put it in the heat, blow dry it. You know, that's how you dry acrylic really fast. So now I'm going to take a little bit of a bigger brush and let's see where we got a bigger brush. This is a brush that I still didn't clean from last night. Jeez. Okay. This brush has got some purple in it. It'll be nice with the magenta. So I'm going to come in, and I'm still just using water. And I'm going to give some foundation, some background here. Oh yeah, magenta. Not usually the first color I turn towards, but I thought this would be fun. I was going for fun. So I'm starting on one side, and I'm kind of, you know, and you want to make sure those lines are pretty dry before you do this. And as you can tell, I got away with it. I'm getting away with it. It's that golden acrylic and using it quite thin, not a lot of water. And let's see. Oh, sometimes it's nice to have a spray bottle. No, I didn't announce that ahead of time. But the spray bottle can kind of have a help with the transitions because acrylic dries so fast. And I'm feeling like I don't want to do just magenta. I feel like I really want some blue to transition into. So I'm going to do it, some of this manganese blue. And I'm just going to make a transition here. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, nice. I might want to even turn it. See, in that, I see how I use that spray bottle, but I had something to make sure that that pink, or just putting a little bit of water down on the canvas before, just clear water, you know, without pigment. And then you can get yourself a nice transition. See, I'm moving fast. If you want to have like nice gradation, you got to move fast. Oh, look at this painting. This painting might want to be in this direction, actually. A little bit more blue down here. And I'm very gently touching the canvas, very gently, going back and forth. Sometimes nice to have a dry brush, another brush that's dry that you can kind of like smooth it out. But you can see that there's going to be a point where it's going to start, the paint's starting to dry, and it's going to be like, don't touch me, don't do it, you're going to mess me up. It's like picking a scab. You know, like this pink down here, the magenta is already drying. So I got to be careful and should probably let it be. So, and then at this point, you know, I'm like, okay, now I got to let it dry. So what, you could busy yourself with doing the edges. I think it's really nice to take away those white edges, like right in the beginning. Like when you're doing, this would be considered, this is considered the first coat. Also, in the Mish technique, we call it the imprimatura. So the first coat. And so in that first coat, my real goal here is to kind of push back take away the white, push back the value so that I can bring back my lightest value. And it's really helpful, like in the beginning, to really make a nice mid-tone, because if it's too light, it's not going to work out very well. The darker in some ways, the better. So here we have, like, we can have a little transition here. I'm gonna do this side before I do my pink, because my brush is got blue on it. I'm being picky now, or I'm doing busy work, to be honest. I'm doing busy work because it's got to dry before, the front's got to dry before I can work on it anymore. Yeah, right on. I love to see this action. clicking through, seeing you guys all at work. This is so great. So we're going to keep moving along here. And next phase, and of course you can still be, let me be ahead of you. You don't have to be right at the same, in the same step. Let me just jump ahead a little bit, and I'm gonna look at, it's fun to use like the back of things too. So I'm gonna work with, now I've got titanium white. And I saw earlier a comment though from Rosa that said, oops, my lines weren't totally dry. And you know, that will happen. There's so many times that it can happen, and then you maybe end up with like a splotchy line, you know, like you see a little bit of like it dried a little bit in some places, but that can be really cool because then there's like this, it's even more minimal. Like you don't have much information at that from the original, but then now, since you even if you totally lost it, you physically with your hand painted those lines before, so they're there still. And now that we're going to come from the other direction, we're going to come with white, and we're going to bring the light back in, and that you're going to, each time you go over those lines, you're going to find them even more. So it's kind of an interesting thing. Like sometimes I'll even do it on purpose. You know, I know that it's not totally dry, but I'll go over it and it'll take some of it away. And it gives me more information in some ways. Sometimes it's annoying and it doesn't work out, but we're working kind of fast here too. So, but every mistake, you know, every time you do something like that, where it's like, oh, that's not what I wanted, you remember that for the future, you know, and it's all going to turn into something. So, you know, technically I could have gotten a little bit darker here, a little bit darker, but this is totally going to work out just fine. And it's nice to see like the raw umber. It's kind of like this earthy tone that kind of goes, you know, it's warmer in a way, and then having this cool magenta and the manganese blue on top. And I'm very lean here, you know, like there's no texture. I'm not gobbing on paint. You know, in general, I don't gob on paint. I'm going to take a gob. I try to get myself to gob on paint sometimes, like when I'm just trying to break the mold, and it's hard for me. I got to take some painting classes with some paint gobbing. So I'm going to use another filbert now for going into my whites. I'm going to go for a little bit of a smaller brush. And this says it's a number 12. It's from Blick. But, you know, every company, they're all going to be a little bit different. But it has this really, really soft, the soft synthetic brush. And if you take care of these, you know, they'll last a while. I like the long handles too, especially for things like this. I really into also these short handles, but they're kind of for a little bit of a different, they're more for like getting into the details later. I mean, they work just great too. Look, you can get back here, you can get far enough back, but these long handle ones are really wonderful for doing flow lines. So I've got some clean water here. That's important. Don't want to use your dirty water when you're going into your whites. You want to kind of, when you shift gears, you're shifting gears from going into color and into the darks, you know, and you could even keep going at this phase, you know, like I could find, maybe there's a landscape down here, or, you know, I could keep going into the dark at this point, and maybe like even articulating these again a little bit darker. That's totally cool at this point, you know, like this is the phase of going into the darks. But for sake of time, we're going to jump right into the lights now. And you know, you can spend weeks on this phase, you know, really making something, you know, really going into those darks and into the composition. And So now I've got my white here, titanium white. Very, titanium white is for this gonna be much, you don't want it, just basically you don't want to use zinc white for this, okay? If you have zinc white, this is not what you want to be using. Zinc white is really is for thinning things down, it's for mixing. It's not for creating opacity and bright whites. Titanium white is great for that. Titanium white is also very cold on the spectrum, and we want that too. So we're thinning it down. I'm making that little puddle. See, this is really, really key, is thinning down the white. And of course, there's a point where it gets too thin, but that's where you got to go back and forth and find that balance, right? And so I take off some, and I don't mix all of my paint with the water. Some of it is still pure from the tube here. I just have a little bit of a little puddle going on over here with the water, because I want that, like, that pure white, that's that pure paint. I'm going to use that a little bit later, right? So I want to have a variety. And so I'm taking out some of that paint and the water from my brush, and I use my rag again. Remember, you always have your rag there. And so now we're stepping into a new gear. We're now going into the light, and I'm going to put on my light goggles. You see them? Got my light goggles on. And now we're gonna start with, we're gonna consider too, here we don't have an idea really of where's the light coming from, but we already have some suggestions actually. You know, like, see this like little bit more of a shadow here, and I'm not too concerned with like really figuring it out now, but I'm going to pick one of them. I'm going to go with that. So this one right here, and I'm going to go for like where's my brightest light, you know, and it's going to be kind of like, think of it's some kind of, it's a shape. Oh, it's a noodle. Oh my God, the noodles, I'm never going to get away from them. And look, see, I'm fading out a little bit on one side. So I put down one line, and then I start to kind of dry brush it. Dry brushing, I'm using just a little bit of paint that's in there. And this is where a canvas rather than a board is going to be much more forgiving. And look, I can bring that line, and I'm just going to come all the way down. And you want to be careful to not go over an area too many times sometimes, because then what do? You end up picking the scab. You know, you're like, I want to make it smooth. I want to make it smooth. Yeah, don't be patient. You're going to make it smooth, but you have to break away for a minute, let it dry, and then come back again. So, and especially when we're looking for, we want to have some transparency. See, we still want to see these lines coming through. So that's why we're really thinning down the paint. We're not going straight for the full white. So I'm going to come through on this one. And I can come through and broaden that a little bit. So I can take some more, use my rag, take some more paint out. See, now I'm feathering it. It's still drying. It's not totally dry yet, right? So I can still feather it a little bit. But whenever the paint's starting to dry and it's saying it's getting agitated, that's, you got to pay attention to that signal and just let it be. Even if it's not smooth, let it be. Because we'll come back to it again and again. Now we have another one. I really find that, like, you know, you put down that initial kind of like line, and then you start to blend it a little bit. And so this one, and they're each going to be a little bit different. This one, I don't have a real sharp edge because it's kind of like in the middle of this ripples. That's what's happening here. We're rippling. And see, also, the canvas is to my advantage. I've turned it in a direction that it's really to my advantage. And now I'm starting to warm up as well, feeling more confident. I don't need to do as many brush strokes. All right. So I keep going. I keep going rather than getting caught up on one of them because they need to dry. And as I'm painting and going along doing this demo, also, I know if there's any you know, questions that are real pertinent to that moment, say something. Or Alicia, if something goes in the chat, you could tell me. Just want to put that out there. You know, we got to make the most of our
I'm always
time.
keeping an eye on the chat, guys. If you have questions, drop them in there.
Cool. See, and sometimes you got to stand up, get your body in it, and I definitely find it a little bit challenging to talk while doing these lines sometimes, but it's a good challenge. And you can continue to you know, to figure out where these lines are. So now I've focused on the center of these noodles. I'm going to call them noodles. And now I'm going to come around them. And this is interesting because what we're going to do now is we're going to create space. So see how I'm going to come around the edge of this guy. And then I'm going to feather it out on this side. So you put down a line and then you feather it out. You got to move kind of fast, you know, because the paint's drying. See, right now we're pulling these on top, you know, like this is coming in front, but then we're going to pull the other ones on top. And that's the thing, is like that's up to you. But it's kind of, for me in the beginning, like right now, I don't have much of a plan. So I'm just kind of like giving them form and dimension through painting the kind of, I'm giving, you know, painting some light on them and then around them. So this is like using the white as atmosphere. See, I'm creating actually more shadow on this form by bringing this white right up next to it. I can still create the dark by putting in a white line and then fading it.
Michael Moore.
Right. So see that's a real good example right there. I'm going to do it again right here. See, instead of having to go back and make that dark, I can make it with my light. By creating an edge and then fading it. I'm going to do one more here. I'm going to give it a little bit more space. So this is, I think, the real key. Something I was, thinking about this morning, thinking about last night. Like, if I really distill it down, what is it about? It's about creating edges and sharp and soft edges. Has so much to do with creating this kind of space. And this is just comes with time, the soft, being able to create really soft transitions, and doing it with a medium like acrylic and just water, because it does dry really fast. And that's one of the reasons I love acrylic for certain things, is because it does dry fast. And like for live painting, it's amazing because I can be up on stage. I can do a painting like I did yesterday, and I can bust it out using the same kind of concept. And I can, as I'm aware of, I'm letting these guys dry as I'm doing this. I'm kind of like, I know like the sequence that I want to go for, and I don't necessarily know everything that's going to happen, but I know that it's generally a good direction. So I didn't do this, I just did this on one side, right? I don't have to do it on the other side. This one needs a little bit more. But I could do a little bit, like especially right here, this one could really use maybe a little bit. It'll pop it forward in space. So I'm fading it out. Look at how much dimension is already coming in. It's amazing. Coming in on this side. These ones have a lot more space here. So I'm going to come back now, and actually this one needs a little bit of an edge. See, and that's what happens to me all the time. I'll do it on one, and then I'll be like, oh, dang, I got to do it on all of them now. So now I'm going to come back to the ones in the center with, I'm still thinning down my white. It's not totally just straight up white. And here, okay, I might want to be, I know I didn't bring this up before. Many of you know what this tool is, but for those of you that don't, this is called a maul stick. It's a painting stick. And it's basically a dowel with a little bit of paper towel in here and a little piece of a rag and some duct tape. And it's used to balance my hand. See, I use the edge of the canvas or the easel, and then I also use my leg, or I'll use my hand on the easel, so I have 2 points of contact, right? And then here I can balance my hand, but this is a little bit, I need more range of motion here, so I might actually not use this for right now, because I think we need a little bit more range of motion. So this is where it's like, I got to stand up, I got to use my body, I got to get myself in a position, and have a very sensitive touch, right? See, I'm just like, and now that white's going to pop. So you got to build it up. You're not going to get it in the first round. You're just not. So don't try. See, and I build it up again, and it's just it's going to get more vibrant. And we just kind of, we don't have to go all the way on, we don't have to paint the whole thing. There we go. And see how it goes fast now. And that's the thing, is like you have to, you build it up. And each time you go over these lines, you know, you refine them more. So that's good. Painting takes time. And, you know, don't get frustrated with that part. I mean, you're gonna, but we all do. I mean, I curse it so often, especially when you have a deadline. You're like, oh, why is this? Like, I can do better. I know this. I just got thwarted so hard with my mushroom, the painting I was finishing for the mushroom exhibition of the Vision Train, our Mushroom Magic exhibition. And that little painting, oh, it tortured me. It tortured me. I'm like, you're just a little painting. Why are you doing this to me? And it's like, you know, no matter, as soon as you think you got something, you know, you're gonna get messed with. It's like life, I guess. It's like making you keep realizing that you're, you know.
I just have to laugh at that, the divine humor in that, you know.
It's true, but painting's so good for that, right? It's such a teacher. Going with the flow. All right, so since we got a schedule that we're on, we're gonna let that chill right now. And see, so I've just focused on one of these directions. And yeah, I did kind of lose my middle point. I know somebody asked about the middle point before, but it's just good to have reference. Like it could not be necessary, but see, if I put a figure in here, that's where it's really going to be important, you know, or if there's some kind of like shape and that shape is not there in the center. But this is a very kind of abstract form situation that we got going on. So, and I could keep refining this, but that's enough for now. So I'm going to put, always, your brush, you want to make sure that you never leave your brush full of paint, right? Hanging out. That's how you kill your brushes. So make sure you get it out with the water. You really want to, make sure you get water out, make that a habit, immediately. And then later you can wash it with soap and water. So we're going to put that aside and we're letting this white dry. This is where I really should have a hair dryer, but for this demo. Dry, paint, dry. And now we're going to switch over to some glazing. And I'm going to pick two different colors for this. Actually, I'm going to work with the, let's see. I'm going to work with the blue, and I'm going to work with some yellow. And so I put Hansa Yellow medium, or Hansa Yellow. I think somebody had said, was it light or medium? I know that it's both, but I have a medium here. I have the light as well. Use whatever you have. Indian yellow is really one of my faves. And I don't know why I chose Hansa over Indian, but I'm going to use Hansa because I'm going to follow my my suggestions, and because something's going to happen and it'll be awesome. So whatever you have, you use that. And yeah, so it's drying, it's drying, it's drying. And I have some clean water. I'm gonna actually put some of this water into another container real quick. Yeah. It doesn't get, you know, I mean, working with the light colors, you wanna make sure you're not working with real murky water. And this is a good time to also bring this up, glazing medium and medium in general. Medium in general is something that is good to use, especially, you know, medium in general is it's the binder, it's binder that is without pigment, and it has different qualities. So it's the, like paint, what's in this paint is a pigment, that's the color, mixed with a binder. So that's what makes it stick to the canvas, right? And in acrylic, acrylics are based on polymers, so it's a plastic, right? Watercolors are based on, their binder is gum arabic, which comes from trees, plants. And that gets revived again with water, like watercolor does. Oils, their binder is linseed oil. You know, and then you have, with all of these different mediums, you have different solvents that thin them down. So acrylics have been especially made to thin with water, right? But once they're dry, you can't use water to activate them again, but you can thin them down. So to extend the drying, you know, to make it so it doesn't dry so fast, there's different acrylic mediums that'll make it go slower. And there's mediums like this one, a satin glazing liquid. This is really good for thinning down the paint, but giving it still binding quality. Because when we thin it down with so much water, there's some pigment and the binder is really dispersed. So this gives it a little bit more strength. But good, you know, we can get away with it though, but it's still not like super archival in a sense. Like you're going to want to put a protective coat over it, or even with like the thinness of a varnish or something at the end. Because in general, like right now, these glazes that we put on here and thinned it down, we thinned it down so much. If I were to take a rag and really rub it, it would come off, some of it, because it's sensitive. You know, it doesn't have as much binder. So you use the medium to strengthen the thin glaze. And so that's something that you can use. I didn't have it on my list, and so I'm not going to use it right now because we can still get away with thinning it down. It's just, you know, to really understand what does it do, why is it helpful, slowing down the paint sometimes. But it frustrates me personally with acrylic if it dries too slow. Like it doesn't, I like it to dry faster. But sometimes for a glaze, if you want more time to really make it blend, it can be fantastic to use it. And I'll use this and use a little bit of water. So definitely experiment with that. So now I'm going to go towards I'm going to reach out to my Hansa Yellow, and I'm going to grab a nice clean brush, thin it down. Thinning it down is like, you know, that's how you make a glaze in a sense. It's like thinned down paint. You know, in watercolor, you'd call it a wash. All right, and so now I'm going to come in and I'm just going to glaze. See, ooh, that's bright. Just going to glaze these main noodles. I'm going to bring them all the way down. Nice. And so you can control, you know, if you don't want it to be that vibrant, thin it down a little bit more. And we're just painting over.
So Amanda, to confirm, you are using glazing medium right now or not?
I am not. I'm just using water. You can. I wanted to speak to it, you know, but I didn't have it on the materials list, and it's not absolutely necessary. You know, if you don't have it, don't, you know, you can still do it. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to keep it real minimal, the materials list for today, because we are all over the world, you know, and we only really pushed the announcement for this like a week ago. And then, and this is a dipping your toes into this. You know, if we want to get more complex, then yeah, let's do a deeper, more in-depth workshop. Like, you know, some of you did do the workshop we did in July, and we are going to do another one in November and expand it off of what we did in July. Different theme. We're gonna learn. We learned a lot, you know, doing that, and it was pretty awesome. I'm pretty stoked with how that went, and we're going forward. We're gonna do another edition in November, and we're gonna open up registration for that in the next couple weeks. So here we go. Look how fast this happened, you know, glazing this. And now I've got some cool greens in here, which I'm really digging. Nice. All right, so that happened fast. I'm going to put that aside. And I'm going to now grab my blue, that same blue that I put down here, and I'm going to use water again. There's still, my blue's not totally dried up. And a nice little pro tip for those of you that are into acrylic painting and get annoyed with your brush drying too, or I mean your paint drying too fast, these stay wet palettes are awesome. These are really awesome because your paint will stay wet for a long time. This is a little old actually, but it's got a sponge in here that gets wet. And yeah, just a little side note. Okay, so now I'm thinning down. I've got some of my blue, thinning it down with the water. And I'm going to come in now to some of those. I'm really thinning it down. Nice. I'm coming into where I put these little, you know, what was it, that atmosphere. I'm going to come in and I'm going to paint that space in. So this is considered real local glazing. And I didn't really put any white over here, but I can still put a little bit of the blue. But you'll see that wherever I'm putting this blue glaze on top and there's white underneath, it's going to have a different character, has a different quality than where there's no white. And that's the thing, is like, see that yellow and how that yellow really like is glowing? It's because of that white underneath it. And you could leave a little bit of that pink in the middle, like you don't have to paint over all of it. But this blue is now corresponding to some of this blue down here. Now we're just kind of connecting it. Make sure you don't have too much water. If you have too much water, take it off. You know, just use your brush to dab your brush on your rag. think I'm running out of blue here. So look at that nice kind of like purples that are happening. Because I'm using the same pigment that I had before, it's just kind of like connecting in with the blue that's below. It's creating quite a nice effect. And you see now we have actually like a full spectrum here of color. Jam this in. Not jamming anything. I'm softly, sweetly bringing in this. See how I'm holding the brush really far back, and I'm just, you know, I'm moving the brush pretty fast too. So it really gets dispersed, and it's and because I'm just using water too, it goes, you know, it dries fast, so I have to keep moving my brush in many different directions, not just the same direction. And as we come down here, it's like, well, you know, this is the same blue, so it's not going to create much of a difference, but there's a little bit of a value difference. You know, we did bring that white, we created a little bit more form using the white, so I can just glaze it gently with this color right now. All right, so I've covered all my white. And up here, I feel like I could use a little bit more blue. See, now it's like, now the color's popping. Before it was just like, it just got dirty. You know, so you got to be, sometimes dirty colors are really important. Oh, that was a lot of blue. I'm going with it. Dirty colors are really, really important. That's what we get also through. And see, now I've got so much blue up there, I got to keep working with that. Instead of going backwards, I'm always going forwards. So I'm going to bring a little bit more blue in here and here and here. All right, so now it's more integrated. So we're chasing the clock now. Now I want, oh gosh, let's see, I look at that and I'm like, I need a little bit more blue over here too. That's what happens. But this is great because actually, you know, the way I will start out sometimes is I'm a little timid with the color, you know. I'm afraid to put too much color on there. And so the first glaze is maybe a little bit too light. And maybe you need to come in and bring in a little bit more color. You know, but of course you need to make sure it dries. There you go. And then it's more, you know, and the color's more vibrant. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to look at these other guys here that we kind of you know, are now in the background, and we're going to give them a little of attention. We're going to come into some whites with them, and I could at this phase go into some darks and then into whites, but because of that's an option, but because of our time right now, I'm just going to go straight into white. And of course we got to let it dry a little bit before we get into the white too much, because it's gonna mix.
Amanda, when you say you would come into some dark, do you mean back to the raw umber?
Yeah, it could be the raw umber, or I could choose to use some of the pink, but I would probably go back to the raw umber. That would probably be that's my base. You know, you want to use, when you're thinking about your darks, you want to use the colors that you have already on your canvas. So what we have now in the darker fields are raw umber, magenta, and blues. But I would put the raw umber and the magenta really would be my, you know, would be a great dark. All right, let's see if I can do this now. Is it gonna bite me? It feels pretty dry. Okay, so now in this direction, I might feel like I'm not as, maybe I want to go this direction to see if if this works better for my arm, or like this, you know, like this is how I like to do this. Like, what is going to make it easiest for me to do this? I'm going to try this. I'm going to see how this feels. And I always, you know, the first line is always a little awkward. It's like, okay, deep breath. And kind of fade that. There we go. It's going to work out. We're going to live. Yeah, and so if this is really going to be in front, see what could easily happen here is that this series that I'm doing right now of lines, that these are actually going to be in the back, but I want to refine them because they're a little sloppy, because they were just a part of my sketch. So I want to bring them back in front. I want to focus on them. And so I'm going to paint them on top of the other ones. So I can then come back to the other ones again. You know, it's kind of like this, it's a real weaving of going between the lights, the darks. But to be honest, I'm still not really sure what I want. And each step of the way that I go, I get a little bit more of an idea, and I get inspired. Because there's so many things, especially with glazing, that I don't really know it. What's going to happen. Like this happens all the time in workshops, and when we get to the glazing point, it's like, so, well, which color do I use? You know, because there isn't really a formula that is like, this is the method. That it says this is, you know, there's some things that we try out and we're like, yeah, this definitely works great for that, for a specific effect. But it gets complex, especially with the subject matter that you're trying to paint, you know. And it depends if it's a painting that is being discovered, or if it's a painting that you've already very clearly conceptualized and you want to render. See, these guys, they're just a simple line, so I'm just going to put a little bit of light on this edge. All right. And so we have a similar situation here where we want to maybe give a little bit of light on the edge, right? That's going to also pull it in front. But if you keep working pretty thin like this, you're going to see both through. See, I put the line down and then I go back and feather it out. And it just takes practice. And that's why doing all these lines is kind of like a fun practice. Let's see, I'm coming all the way through with the white here. Yeah, a lot of times too, I make decisions based on like there being around the amount of paint that's in my brush. Sometimes there's too much paint and it needs to go somewhere. And if it's not on my rag, it needs to go somewhere on the canvas. So this is something that I haven't really brought up, but is a very important point. And it's something that Ernst Fuchs would call optical grays. Optisches Grau. So it's not a gray that I'm creating through mixing white with black. I'm thinning it down. It's just white paint thinned down. See, so it creates this atmosphere. And that's, see, I'm doing it here. I'm creating that. I'm creating dark with light. See, I just put that white line and now I'm coming through and I'm fading out that edge. And this optical gray is incredibly important for creating these dirty colors. The colors that are kind of like, you know, it's not the pure vibrancy of a color, but what it does is it puts these pure colors on top of each other and separates them like atmosphere. Separates space, so the pigments aren't mixed together, they're layered. All right, so I'm going to come back and I'm going to pop some of the whites in those again on the very top. And so, you know, you could go through with this process of what I'm showing you today, and you could put this on repeat, you know, on a painting, and just keep going into that weave of going into the darks, creating form, going into the light. Look, I'm going to go for 2 at the same time. See, but I'm always blending that line out. Oh, we got a minute left. If you need to go, it's okay. We're going to probably go over just a little bit. I can't help myself. You know, time is like one of those things that we are constantly dancing with. That would be nice. Sometimes it's a struggle. But I find that time is also really gets me to, deadlines get me to paint fast. Like having that session yesterday was really painting the mushroom. That was so much fun. And it's like, okay, if you know the set's coming to an end, it's like pop in some of those lights. Move fast. 50 brush strokes in one. I love that as a concept. Oh, see, I'm getting a little bit too excited here. My lines are getting a little willy. So, and also I want to let you all know that we're going to start, you know, these workshop series that are happening now through the fundraiser. Really great way to kind of have these little bite-size workshops to kind of like, you know, digest some new information, get to know different teachers. We're going to start a real kind of like figure drawing and direct painting, plein air, still life. Stefan Lucas, who is a student of the Vienna Academy, has been teaching the figure drawing for a while. He's I've encouraged him to put together a little program. It's going to be a month long. I think on Wednesdays there will be figure drawing, and Fridays will be direct painting, and some real basics, back to basics. And that's what a lot of us need, you know. That's the foundation. That's what Fuchs would always, so many times when people would come to him, like all these fantastic visionary painters, be like, do you paint from life? Have you painted from life? You know, we learn so much from that. So yeah, Stefan's going to be doing these classes coming up soon. I think when are we going to start, Alicia? End of September, beginning, the very end of September. But we're going to announce that real soon. And yeah,
Maybe the last week of the month, first week of October. I think maybe the first Wednesday in October we'll start.
Yeah. So we don't have it totally dialed in, but I'm just planting the seed, putting it out there. I'm usually ahead of myself in almost all the ways, but then we're like, okay.
It's good. You plant a lot of the seeds, and then, you know, you activate a lot of people to follow through.
Yeah.
Nurture seed.
We can do it. You know, we spend so much time also thinking we need to have everything perfect, when sometimes, you know, you need to just go for it. And that's the painting too, you know, that's the painting. And so, yeah. And then in November, we are going to, I think, be starting around November 7th.
November 7th.
We're going to do another deep dive. Is that election day, isn't it, in the US? I think it's a perfect day to start. Didn't we start then on we started on the 4th of July.
November 3rd is election day, but it is that week. Yeah,
Okay.
Tuesday, November 3rd.
Yeah, I guess starting on that day is probably not good because we want people to go vote. But I'm not much of like a nationalist patriot kind of character. I'm for planet. I'm for planet. Like, I'm for the biosphere. All right. Okay, so I'm going to be done with the whites for this round. And it's interesting. See, I didn't even go into my darks again, but I could have, right? This is that option that Tony brought up too. He's like, if you were to go into your darks, see, and I would have kind of followed my same lines. I would bring them on in front again, but being careful, being sensitive with how much. And now in this round, we're going to, I think I'm going to come in and do the same thing that I did before. I'm going to do the same kind of yellow, and then I'm going to do some blue. And we're going to see what that does. It's going to be interesting. I know that much. So where's the brush I was using? And since people are asking about it, let's do it then. Let's do it, okay? Like we've done the white already, and I normally wouldn't go into my darks too much, but what's normal, huh? You know, I'm all about breaking rules. So I'm going to use a little bit of my magenta and a little bit of my raw umber. Those two together. Again, the white, I'm not going to, so this is great. The white's going to be drying, and I'm going to come in just a little bit over some of my, thinning it down in the same way, using some of that pink and some of that umber. So now I'm kind of making a new color, right? But those colors are already on here. And then I'm going to come, especially in parts where we're going over the yellow. I'm just kind of coming into that dark. There we go. There we go. So I'm just coming in on this kind of, just like choose a side. And it gives a little bit of like a buffer. And kind of really is more descriptive in a way that this is in front now. And the other one is behind. All right, just a couple more, and it can just be on that edge. You know, you don't even need to go in too far, but if you do, it's okay. All right. Now a little bit further. I'm going to turn my canvas this way. And so after this session, when we decide it's time, if you want to keep painting and jamming out together, go get on the train. It's so cool that we have the train. See, I'm already coming over my white a little bit. See, I'm coming over my white there because I'm like, oh, I got to blend it out. That's why I would do the darks first, so the white doesn't get contaminated by the darks. Because now I'd have to, you know, if I want to make sure that's white, then I got to come back with the white a little bit. Before I come in with the glaze. All right. And see, that is, you know, me just pointing that out is gonna, I have to do it. But see, this is real life here. This is the real life story. It's like, you know, you got to follow your impulse. And some things you care about, some things you don't care about. And getting perspective on sometimes when you're taking things too personally, you know, or you're trying to control things too much, you need to be careful. See, now my white's going to mix a little bit with that. See, it needs to dry. That's why you can't use oils like this, because it needs to dry. I mean, you can, but you got to wait for it to dry. Otherwise, they're just going to mix together and get murky. You don't want them to, because there's like the titanium white has a kind of coolness to it that is really is what we want. We want that cold. We like because what it is like we're going back to we're bringing back the original, that white that was there, you know, the gesso. Most canvases are gessoed and have titanium white. And that white's just so bright, like any color on it is just gonna pop. You know, have you ever tried to want to paint something like bright yellow and you have something dark underneath? And then it like just ends up looking like mud. It's because you need to put the white down first, you know, bring back the light and then give it some color. Right, so. Okay. So now, oh, but I still want more white. See, that's the thing also. So many people, you know, when you get into this, when painting just with the white, you're like, is it too much white? Is it not enough white? You know, you got to experiment with the too much or not enough. But a lot of times you're going to want more than you think, because that next color kind of gobbles it up. And remember, you can always come back, bring more white. That's the beauty of this. Always can keep working on it. Let's see, each time I come back over it, it just gets to be more vibrant, more light. All right. So, gotta let this dry a little bit. And let's see, we're gonna do our last pass of glazes on this. And then we're gonna be done for today. And of course, you can keep experimenting and working on this. I wonder what this painting is going to turn into. I mean, it's already this beautiful little simple kind of dance of lines. Okay, so now we're going to go in and we're going to do these last glazes on this little friend. So it's dry enough. Yep. Something got on there. Okay, so I'm going to start with my yellow. And I really didn't mean to go over by this much, but I can't help myself. I get too excited. So I'm thinning it down. And I'm still not using any glazing medium, but if you do have it, you know, use it if you're feeling it, but you don't have to. See, that's really why I'm, oh, that's too much. Holy moly. See, let me just take a rag, pull it off a little bit. Phew. This Hansa Yellow is intense. Pretty good though. Okay, so here we go. We're gonna bring some yellow over these guys. I'm actually kind of digging the vibrancy. A little bit more vibrant. See, and that's where yellow, especially out of all of them, you know, it's really, that's where you're gonna, if you put the white down first, see, there's a quality to putting the white down first where the color really gets to be itself completely, instead of being kind of, because when you mix a color with, the white, it turns it into more of a pastel, right? Yeah, if you mix, you know, but there's times when you want a pastel, and we are actually getting these pastel tones really through our optical grays, but it's a different kind of pastel. But it's really important, like I find with people that find the mish technique, you know, or even start painting with the mish technique, it can also be, you know, you need to at some point go out and do some direct painting, and and really use nature as a place to go to study, because you need to study color, you need to study form, you need to study how luminous shadows are, for an example, you know, and you do that from life. So, you know, the still life, the even painting or drawing a self-portrait, or painting a self-portrait from a mirror, you know, looking at life, it's the best teacher. And my teachers always really professed that, and I really agree. Can't argue with it. There's just more, and what it does is it helps train our hands, the eye-hand coordination. And it's like every time you actually like make a line or draw something, and especially studying from life, you integrate that into your body. There is muscle memory that is happening. And so now I'm going to go to this blue, and here I'm going to go for a little bit more of a liberal glaze, actually. I'm just repeating a little bit of what I did on the other side. Let's see here. And it's going to go over those ones that we did first, and it's going to create some greens. You know, of course, because it's like, you know, blue over yellow, green. Right, so let's see, it's still like harmonic, because it's in the same, you know, we're using quite a limited palette, so we're creating green through mixing blue and yellow. Oh, more blue. It's coming out. Getting a little bit more brave. Every time after doing that white, it's kind of scary to go back into color. And I see a lot of people that do the mish technique, they get afraid of color and don't use enough of it because they get so, everything is supposed to be a glaze. And here we really didn't go into much real direct painting, but it needs to be a part of the toolbox to not be afraid of color and to be able to apply color directly, because my paintings are not all done with glazes. They're not all glazes. There's definitely times when direct painting is necessary. And if you look at other painters in this kind of method, and Fuchs, I mean, firsthand, I worked with him for 10 years. And there were so many times he was constantly breaking the rules, or so I thought, you know, and he's just responding to the work and experimenting. He was experimenting his whole life. And he was having fun. He was like a little kid so often. He was a great whistler too. Loved to whistle. Here we are. We're almost done. Last little bits. Any closing statements, Alicia? We should go around and take a moment and kind of look at each other's work, hold it up to the camera, because that would be so fun.
Yeah, I'd love to go around and spotlight your pieces if you guys are willing to share. When
Just
it's
like,
time, go ahead and just put them up, and then I'll go around and spotlight everybody.
yeah, and you're welcome to reach out, stay in touch. Instagram, you know, if you're on Instagram and you're posting your work, tag me and I'll share. Usually I like doing that. That's so fun. And for your work from today. And yeah, should maybe put the link in for the train, the Nonstop Vision Train Global Art Jam. You throw that in there. You have to request to be a part of the Facebook group. If you don't have Facebook, then you can get on through the website. The website, there's like a little sign up form, and we just make people go through some hoops. So we make sure you know you want to be there and respect the space. So yeah, that's an interesting little adventure. I'm pleased.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. I love the magenta and the way that the magenta and the blue are playing in there, and that weaving is gorgeous.
That's fun. So I hope that this has been, informative and oops. Hope this has been informative and fun.
Oh.
And also with your painting, if you're like, man, I really don't, I kind of want to start over. You know what you can do is you can put a nice dark glaze on your piece, or a couple nice dark glazes, and then go back in again with the whites. So you can always do that. You can always go, push something back with a dark glaze. It doesn't, any color, see which one speaks to you, and then start bringing the whites back in again. And you can keep working like that, layers and layers and layers, and see what happens. Wonderful. Well, let's put on some little tunes, and then we'll fade out and see each other on the train.
Sounds good. See you guys on the train. See you guys next weekend. Hope you have a blessed day.
Yeah, and you can hop on anytime and get involved too if you feel inspired to get involved with this crew, and you can become a conductor and take the crew on a trip. Make sure the train stays on the tracks. It's an experiment. We opened this 5 months ago thinking, let's open something indefinitely, as so many things are indefinitely closing. And so it's, it's an experiment of these times. We're in new times. Yes. All right. Love y'all.